Right. Right. There's a reason you're reading all of that.
Hey, man, how you doing? Sorry, I was not. He regrets his
Are you doing spam spread or I never sit in that. I sit next to you.
I'm with
I'm not in.
All right. I keep looking at this mirror or this board. I know. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our pre-Thanksgiving Tuesday, November 22nd agenda session. If I can get a motion on our minutes. I do have a motion on the minutes. Minutes will stand without objection. We have ordinances in final reading under planning. Councilman Henderson, no issues there. Madam Vice Chair, no issues in your district. All right, moving into Public Works. I will watch the board if you have any comments or questions. Under Economic Development, Mayor's Office, still Vicky and Phil. This now is your time to back out if you'd like. Let me know. I can get you off there. Okay, then you're on. We're going to keep you there. Okay, then very good. Now we'll move into purchases. We have 3 for this evening. We have a sole source. We have no emergency purchases, and I believe no requests for proposals this evening. If you'll take a look there. One question I did bring up on the second purchasing item was because we have 3 vendors. Kevin, you want to talk a little bit about that and how we have changed our, oh, Brent, I see you. Sorry. I see that bright orange vest back there. About how we have changed when we have multiple entities listed on a purchase to.
What's the question?
The question was this morning, I had asked how we keep from any future issues with ranking or assigning when we have multiple vendors
Yeah, so-
inside of a contract.
So when we have a blanket that's awarded to multiple vendors, essentially what happens is whoever answers first gets to come do the work. Or if it's, they've worked on a specific item in the past and we need them to come back and work on that. But this covers all 3. There were 4 responses. We awarded to 3 of the 4, and those 3 can do work under this blanket anywhere throughout the city until we get up to $2 million in expenditures, and then we would have to come back to council. But essentially, I mean, if it's a specific thing that company's worked on, then they may get called back specific for that, or whoever is available to do the service fastest would also be how we do it. And we do that. We do it that way for several blankets throughout the city, like plumbing, electrical, different things.
Okay. I think that was the
Does that
question
answer?
that I had brought up this morning, just given a past circumstance that I was a little concerned about, but it feels like we've got that under control. Okay. Any other questions on our purchases for this evening? If not, if you'll take a look at your November 29th proposed agenda. And Councilwoman Hill, I see your light. You have the floor, ma'am.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to draw some attention to 2 items. The first is item 6A related to the Wrecker ordinance. And I personally have studied this and am feeling really good about it. So I just wanted to say thank you to Councilwoman Dotley for doing the work on that. It feels like a fair update with our current economic environment. The other piece that I wanted to draw some attention to is item 7A under resolutions, economic development, the TIF financing policies. Jermaine sent us an update on what this is. It's basically a cleanup of legal language related to what we passed last time. It doesn't have any major shifts except for like some accounting information. Jermaine, would you just touch on that briefly, please?
Yes. So in the policy that we most recently adopted, one of the things that we did not clarify was that the annual administrative fee needs to be separate from the debt service so that it is not included within the debt service amount that's retained by the city. We also, in talking with the county, wanted to make sure that it was clear how we calculated the annual administrative fee relative to how the county calculates their annual administrative fee, just to make sure that there's consistency there. And then, of course, we made sure to clarify and just to clean up some of the language in the provision around the prohibition against multifamily housing. So that is unchanged. So this TIF policy does not change our stance on multifamily housing. However, I will say, and of course, Nicole is here, and she and I are actively working on this as we speak, as I promised that we would. And so we are in the process of reviewing all of our policies and all of the incentives and levers that we can use to stimulate affordable housing. I think we would all agree that that's a must. And so she and I are in the process of reviewing those things, and we'll come back to the council once we have more of a comprehensive list of things that we can do sort of in the aggregate instead of trying to do things in a piecemeal fashion. And then, of course, the TIF policy also just sort of clarifies some of the language around the stormwater fee requirement, but the stormwater fees are still required. So it is just cleanup from the previous document. We have not changed anything substantially about the TIF policy.
Jermaine, can I ask you, when it comes to the affordable housing component, that we're coupling this with the TIF, that we put this in a presentation and we run this through the new AHC?
I think that's our goal. We can't wait.
Fantastic.
AHC. Hadn't heard that phrase yet. Nicole and I had a long conversation last week, and you all, I think we're very fortunate to have had her join the team at the city, and her perspective on a thoughtful way to approach financing was really inspirational to me. So I think we all have a lot to look forward to in 2023 as it relates to getting our affordable housing policy in lockstep with what we want to accomplish.
Thank you. Thanks,
That's all,
Jermaine.
Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. If I may, Councilwoman Hill, we had a robust conversation last week on the items under legal. Are you okay with the questions that you had presented last week? Did you get your answers?
No, I did not get any answers about the items related to code. As I've reflected on that, I mean, I'm honestly not surprised that I didn't get answers, because I think the question that I asked is something that is bigger than just one short answer. As I considered these codes, and then we have some on some additional fee changes that are being brought up in future considerations related to permits, gas, electrical, mechanical, plumbing, those kind of things. What's crystallizing in my mind is that it is critical that we as a council and as the city get our codes, our zoning, our fees in lockstep around what our housing policy is going to be, so that all these different departments are working toward a common goal, that we don't have silos, that one side's, upping fees and one side's changing or refusing to look at a different way to permit a project, such that we're constantly hearing no versus figuring out what yes we want to get to, and then making sure that obstacles don't immediately become no's.
Sure.
That obstacles become
Yeah.
challenges that we work around when we know what our goals are. So I'm watching that carefully. Thanks for asking.
Sure. Thank you. Appreciate the questions you asked last week. All right, council, if you will continue into ordinances and resolutions for our proposed agenda. I'll watch the board for any questions. I am seeing no lights. If you'll take a look now into future considerations and let me know any questions or comments on future considerations. We have several appointments coming in. Items under finance. And Mr. Goldberg, you're presenting the presentation on the fees. Is that the 29th? Is that correct? Okay. So we'll get an update, obviously, on those. So if you have any questions you'd like to send ahead to Mr. Goldberg, he will be presenting presentation on the 29th. Okay. I am seeing no lights, so we have no department reports this afternoon, and we have no committees this afternoon. Is there anyone who would like to bring any questions or comments to the council before we adjourn until 6? Councilman Henderson, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So last week, I brought up sort of for discussion or thought anyway about maybe offering an amendment to the C2 that would reflect what everybody's trying to currently do in the UGC as far as creating some density in these motels to address the density issue. So, and I've had some conversations with Karen, and I think RPA would rather have some direction from this council. So, Mr. Chair, I guess what I'm asking is if we could sort of, through consensus, direct RPA to perhaps draft some language that would address the density issue in the C2, so that the developers that are wanting to develop these motels into more permanent housing can do so without having to come before the council to seek UGC rezoning every time.
So I don't see any lights, so I'm going to look around the room here, and I'm seeing no objections. I actually think that is a excellent idea personally, and I also did some research on my own and conversations with the city attorney. and Ms. Rennick about the very same thing. So if there is no objection, Karen, you want to take the podium real quick, if you don't care? I know that one item that you and I had particularly addressed was ensuring that the parking requirements with a conversion stay relevant or we adhere to. And that's something that I think is important as we were to convert something over. And also to consider, because folks obviously would maybe have a guest, or they would have two cars versus one car going to travelers. So do you want to touch on that just a little bit?
Sure. I did talk to Dallas when this came up at council last week, and just thinking about what a conversion, what some of the impacts were. One of the items that came up was parking. Just a comment that when someone comes to a motel or hotel, they come in a car, leaving a vehicle, but that if it's multifamily housing, someone might be staying there, they might have guests, and just to look at the requirement for multifamily parking might be into play. Also spoke to the planning department, Rome, Georgia, that had come up as a community that had a transition from hotel motels to multifamily, and that was also something that they commented on, that they kept in their ordinance, that the parking, the multifamily parking requirement come into play.
Okay. So I agree wholeheartedly that the use of UGC and dropping these around to satisfy this need is probably not in our best interest. And if it's, and Councilman Henderson, you gave me a chuckle last week when you said we finally found something and C2 doesn't allow. And my goodness, you're absolutely correct. How do we do that? That's the needle in the haystack. So if there is no objection, and I welcome any comments on it to move forward, Dr. Burrs, you'll hit your light for me.
So Karen, where'd you go? And I guess this is out of my ignorance, but we created these categories, right?
The zoning category is correct.
We created.
Yes,
Okay. And so we can uncreate them or do anything we want, right?
that's correct. They can be amended by council.
And so there's nothing magical about a UGC. We could call it an ABC, or we create.
That's correct. The name and what's in it and the purpose of that zone was approved by council.
And so help me if we decide, well, let me ask you, and I guess let me ask my colleagues one quick question. Is it your understanding that people wouldn't convert these things if they couldn't have the density? I mean, 72 single rooms. Okay. Okay. And so I think there's also another issue here, and that is, and some of it came up last week, is that are we doing a disservice to the people who need this kind of housing by allowing this stack of one room efficiencies? And I guess I'm thinking about you, Chip, about affordable housing doesn't have to be and look a certain way. Are we not creating an even bigger monster by not requiring a little more, what do I want to say it? What we're doing is creating immediate problems in some cases. By allowing the same density, what we're doing is what that I heard you all criticizing. And that is, you have these same rooms and you throw in a microwave or whatever, and it becomes really still not the kind of housing that we want to give people dignity. And that's where I'm going with that.
I
You
think
see
I-
where I'm going?
Yeah, I think I understand.
And irrespective of what happened last week, the message is clear. What we're seeing is something that I think we don't intend either. Obviously, we want housing, right? What I'm seeing, the answer to that seems to be take some of these. It's like putting lipstick on a pig and throwing a microwave in there. And does that get us where we want to be? And it's a density thing that got me. So if you have 72 of these, then you're going to have 72 still not okay places for people, and say, but we got you affordable housing, except the housing, what people are having to pay for that. There's something wrong there. That's all I'm thinking about. And maybe more discussion about it. So I hear what everybody's saying, but what would you do with this? I see density as a problem. I think people have to have a decent level of living. I think they have to have a decent level of living. And everyone that's been brought before me in my district and apparently in other districts, we don't have enough rules for what that needs to look like or be like, or the quality of what goes on there.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
I think that,
I'm getting out of the zoning business of council, and now I'm getting into the management.
well,
which
the
is, I
point
think we need to
is
be
that if
cautious
we
there.
just take a UGC and we say, if we just take a UGC and say, oh, well, the problem is it's not urban. Well, that's just a label. We could call it an ABC. The problem is that we want to come up with a zone. We can change our zoning and say, take a C2 and condition it to death. I mean, the problem is not that. It needs to be more where the people that we're trying to help with housing, there's also some quality and sustainability criteria attached to it
In the conversion.
in the conversion.
Okay.
In
I
the
think
conversion.
I'm following you. I'm just trying to figure out where
I'm afraid if we just
that
open
is
the
in
door.
zoning versus economic development.
Well, we
I guess.
tried it. Well, sometimes in the face of economic development, we lose it. And the people that suffer are the people that we're trying to help. And I really feel pretty strongly about that. From the case we went through last week, there's all kinds of others out there. The same thing. The place in East Ridge that got closed. There's this all over, and somehow we're missing the message of cleanliness and dignity and quality for the people that really need it. Because we're just saying, well, let's just get them off the streets. Well, there's more to that syndrome than just getting them off the streets. So I guess what I'm saying is there needs to be more discussion. I see you popping up, but I don't care. I think there needs to be more discussion. We have certain quality requirements for the housing authority. We have certain quality requirements. So it's more than just getting people off the streets into substandard housing. It's more than just taking away a UGC. Okay, call it a RGC, a rural. I mean, I don't care what you call it. It's that when you think the answer is just renaming it, call it a C2 and condition it. I think there's more to that. It's the dignity of the people and really solving the problem like we're trying to do at the Airport Inn or others. But I think there's just more to it.
Sure. And I
And,
don't disagree with you.
and
at
I don't
all.
think we can silo and say, well, We're just talking about zoning. I think that if people want to turn things over, and I have no problem with people making money. We're a capitalistic society. That's fine. But not on the backs of the people that we're trying to help give a leg up to get up and out. Okay? There's something wrong with that. And we're not having that discussion
And we're-
along with this,
And we're not
okay?
having that discussion if it's rezoned to UGC either.
Huh?
That was kind of my.
You
where my point-
right,
it's
right.
not
We're
being had. If it was
concentrating on
rezoned to
zoning.
UGC, that conversation is not there either.
That's exactly right.
Okay. I understand. Please.
And so we're sitting talking about all this stuff. What about the substance of and the dignity of the people that we say we're trying to help? I mean, are we just trying to get bodies off the street, or are we really trying to get people back in quality circumstances again?
No.
Sorry, but nobody's discussing that, and that.
No, I appreciate that. I do have a couple more lights. So Councilwoman Hill, Jermaine, hang on one second. I want to go
Sure.
around the dais real quick.
Thank you, Chair. My thought about the C2 expansion of density is, as we look at that, Karen, I'd like to really understand what other consequences that could potentially have and how we limit it, because this change is really, I think, generated by a specific concept of a hotel being moved into a full-time residential facility. I'm glad that we're going to have an affordable housing committee, because this speaks to this very conversation. A motel or a hotel that is converted into an apartment style living does not mean that it is a slum. We have one in District 7 right here at Passenger Flats. And we can get one for $1,239 a month if we do anything less than a 12-month lease, or we get $100 off, $50 off if we do a 12-month lease. And that is for a 348 square foot unit. And I don't think anybody feels like Passenger Flats is a woebegone place to live. You get access to, you get Wi-Fi, you don't have other expenses. And so this is a longer conversation to have, but we've opened the door to it of, is density bad? Which it sounds like from District 6 perspective, there's definitely skepticism of density. Is a small home worse than no home? Is my type of countertop or your type of countertop better or worse? I mean, I think that's kind of where we're headed with that. If I don't want to live there, then it's not quality enough. And that's not really what affordable housing is about. And at our most, we need to open the door to ways for the private sector, for profit market, to develop housing that meets affordability standards for people making less than $60,000 a year. That is a fact. Flushing toilets and roofs and insulation and things. And
If they all look like Passenger Flats, that's great. That's not what we're getting right now.
well, right now I don't know that we have another motel conversion into a full-time apartment other than Passenger Flats. What we have are long-term stay motels that do not have long-term leases. So as a lessee, you do not have, like when these folks have gone to Superior Lodge or Budgetel or Chat Suites, they do not have a standard lease with standard rights associated to that lessee. And to me, that is definitely part of the dignity. But also one challenge of one opportunity for those is you don't have to have first and last month's rent either. And that's a lot of money. I mean, much bigger discussion, but good thing because we got till 6. We got time to kill, man. Sorry, Chair. So we have plenty of time to talk about this, even though we are off topic related to the zoning itself. And I think all the better that we have Nicole here. And if it pleases the body after we go around, perhaps we can have her speak to why these might be a useful housing type in our community. That's all. Thank you.
Madam Vice Chair, I do see your light.
I just had a question for Karen in regards to this proposed idea of changing C2. Are we currently working on a revamp of our current zoning code?
Yes, we are.
So we can address these type of issues within that revamp, right?
Yes, we can. One of the kind of the items we're particularly looking at is emerging uses, things that are new to our community that we might not have dealt with before.
Okay, all right. So I just wanted to note that as we continue this conversation, that it is a longer conversation. I agree with Councilwoman Hill that we should have, and maybe consider having a separate meeting, maybe on strategic planning or something to that effect, that we can discuss this a little further.
All right. Seeing no other lights, Jermaine, you popped up rather quick, so I'm gonna.
Well, I obviously want to show due deference to the city council conversation because it's an important conversation, as all of you have indicated. I do think that it is incredibly important for us as the administration to point out that density is not a bad thing, and we do not believe that density has to be in opposition to quality. And we believe that density is going to be an integral part of our affordable housing strategy. And that means that we will need and seek density wherever we can find it in all parts of our city so that we can make sure that we can provide quality affordable housing to everyone. Nevertheless, I understand where Councilwoman Burrs is coming from in terms of the conversation about quality, and I certainly understand that. But we don't believe that quality has to be sacrificed at the expense of density. And so I just want to make sure that that's on the record.
Points very well presented, Jermaine. Thank you. My last question is, Karen, you were here a minute ago. Oh, there you are. You can have apartments in C2.
That's correct. You can have multifamily housing in meeting the density requirement, which is around 18 to 19 dwelling units an acre.
Okay. So I think what we're basically talking about is possibly amending, and I appreciate Madam Vice Chair bringing up the zoning process that we're involved in, because it could be, Chris, maybe are we a year out from that? We talked about this when we were talking about short-term vacation rentals, roughly a year and a half.
A year or a little bit less.
Yes,
Okay.
sometime hopefully winter of 23.
So
We'll wrap it up.
What we're proposing, or what the idea was to basically adjust the density that's allowed in C2
Correct.
and not go to a full-blown UGC, because when you go to a full-blown UGC like we did on Lee Highway, that property now has a 5-story coupled with that. And if we're worried about density, then we've got 5 stories there and no conditions. And UGC is a very powerful tool that we've seen being used around the city. But I think with the conversions, the idea was to simply adjust the density in C2 to allow for affordable housing products to come online. And I'd agree with everything that was said here today. And Nicole, I'm glad you're sitting in here and listening and digesting all of this, because every bit of this is critical. That's all I have to say. And then I'll ask the final question, whether we're ready to move on with that or not. But Councilman Henderson, I see you have your light again, sir.
Well, that was my question. Are we directing RPA to come up with an amendment to the C2 that would allow the density that you would gain in a UGC?
Okay. And that's the basic fundamental question. Are we interested in allowing C2 to have the density for a conversion?
And I would say, and I would stipulate conversion.
Yes, I would agree to the conversion. And I'll add that, that's part A. Part B, if we do want to, and then all we're asking them is to draft language. We're not asking for this to be put on the agenda, because this has to run through planning commission. The second part of that is, do we want to adhere to the parking requirements? And I think we should probably consider the parking requirements that already exist in C2.
I think we need to get off the flat lots. If we're trying to create density, we need to create public transportation, which should help eliminate some of the congestion and the traffic, which means we don't need as much parking as what we typically. And I know that sounds like an
Okay.
urbanist, but
Okay. So we'll go back to the
please don't call me that.
council. Madam Vice Chair, see your light activated again.
Yeah, so could we get, I guess right now I'm not ready to move on anything. I think that if we had more information, just general information from maybe Councilman Henderson, just about what it is, since it was just proposed and brought out today, just more information on that. And honestly, I just think we should address it within the planning work, since we spent so much money getting a consultant in and doing all those things, that we should address it within that. And if it's just a pressing issue, that we should move it into strategic planning for a full presentation and full discussion.
Okay.
Or
so-
in planning committee. Yeah, or in planning committee for a full discussion.
Okay, so just give me a head nod. Would you like RPA to draft some language?
Mm-mm, no.
Not at this time. Would you like to see this in strategic planning?
Yes.
All right, there's our direction. We'll add that to our strategic planning session. Madam Clerk, and I'll get with you on which day when I'm able to look at the schedule more closely, and we'll get this into strategic planning. All right, any other questions or comments before we adjourn till 6? This is a council meeting, sorry. Yeah, not, public speaking is at 6 o'clock. And and anybody can speak at the end of our 6 o'clock meeting for 3 minutes. Not during, yeah. Yeah, no, it's not both meetings. No, sir. I'm sorry. Yeah, but thank you. Any other questions or comments from council? We adjourn till 6.